Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler. It is July 25th, 2018. Thank you for joining me for another climate change and clean energy video blog. Now, for this segment, I'm going to provide an update on an earlier video blog where we talked about a high probability that the US East would see severe rainfall. And this video blog was produced last Friday, and so that was 5 days ago. And now we are seeing, after day after day after day of extreme rainfall for the US East Coast, we are starting to see some very severe flooding impacts that are now affecting tens of millions of people along the US East Coast. And this is the National Weather Service Flood Watch area map for today. And as you can see, it extends all the way from southern North Carolina into upstate New York and through the US East. And the National Weather Service has a rather serious warning here for people to be cautious, and that additional heavy rainfall is predicted for today and tonight. Now, overall, over the past week, the US East Coast has seen very severe and in some cases hurricane level rainfall amounts. And this is an accumulated rainfall map provided by NOAA of the past 7 days, and it's very difficult to see here, but this region, which I'm indicating by my cursor, is over the Outer Banks of North Carolina. This is Norfolk here. This is the Baltimore region here and Washington, D.C. region. And up here is Pennsylvania, where reports of extreme flooding have also occurred. On the right-hand side of this map, we see a scale in inches. So areas in pink are where we have observed between 10 and 15 inches of rainfall over the past week. And you'll note little spots of blue here and there, and that's a 15 to 20 inch precipitation amount. So very, very, very heavy rainfall for the US East Coast over the past week. Now I'm going to go ahead, and I'm currently in Virginia Beach. I'm going to read a couple of headlines from the Virginia Pilot. And the headline here from the Virginia Pilot is Rain, Wind, Floods, and Fear. And it says that the first line is, Amy Simpson is no stranger to flooding, not after living in Pungo for more than 2 decades. Now, Pungo is an area in southern Virginia Beach that backs up to some of the sound regions of North Carolina and near the Outer Banks. And the Virginia Pilot goes on and says, but this is the worst she's ever seen it, she said. Neighbors couldn't get out of their driveways and water crept into many houses. The severe flooding is a product of a nasty 1-2 punch. Heavy rain for several days has been coupled with wind blowing from the south, bringing high tides inland. So that's just a snapshot of what's happening in my local area, but all up and down the East Coast, there's ongoing flooding, primarily due to heavy rains. And our region is suffering flooding due to a combination of heavy rains and winds coming off the sounds of they're just west of the Outer Banks. Now I'm going to talk about some of the weather and climate change related impacts. Going to provide you another update. So what's occurring is we have a upper level high pressure system here, or I'm sorry, high pressure system at the surface here. We have an upper level trough that is running down from the north and digging deep over the eastern US. And you can see it in this jet stream map here, this upper level trough running down. And that's providing cool and unstable air. Toward the west, we have a upper level high pressure system that is basically blocking weather systems, and so this feature is what is known as an omega block, which tends to produce very persistent weather. And in the west, we've seen very persistent heat, and in the east, we've seen very, very persistent rainfall. Now, going back to this moisture map, so what we've seen consistently is a plume of moisture. It could be called a river of moisture, rising up from the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, and running over the U.S. East Coast and focusing in on the U.S. East between the Outer Banks and Pennsylvania. And what we've seen is storm after storm after storm. And this high pressure system to the east is circulating clockwise winds over warmer than normal sea surfaces. And when you get a storm feature like this, it tends to cool off the sea surfaces a bit. But even presently, the sea surface temperatures are above average off the U.S. East Coast. And these warmer than normal sea surface temperatures are providing more atmospheric moisture than would typically feed into this kind of storm system. Now, climate change adds more moisture to the Earth atmosphere overall. So where you do see rainfall, you tend to see a potential for heavier storm events. And the added warm sea surfaces off the U.S. East Coast are a signal of human-caused climate change, because climate change warms the surface features of the Earth, both the ocean and the land. Now, another factor that is less certain but is also a fingerprint of human-caused climate change are these blocking patterns. Some science indicates, and this is not 100% certain in the science, but there is a growing body of evidence that indicates receding sea ice in the Arctic affects the amplitude of the jet stream, and high amplitude jet stream waves can generate these fixed weather patterns. And as we've said before, the issue with the U.S. East Coast has been the persistence of heavy rainfall, with storm after storm after storm rolling in. Now I'm going to switch to the local weather, regional weather radar, just to provide you an idea of what's going on now. And as we can see, there are areas of rainfall that continue to rise up from the Atlantic just off the North Carolina coast, moving in through eastern North Carolina. This is one wave here. A second wave running in through the Chesapeake Bay region, as well as eastern Virginia and parts of Maryland. And a third plume of moisture running up into Canada right now after running in through Pennsylvania. So, to sum up, the event that we are presently seeing in the eastern U.S. is quite extreme, and the rainfall totals we are seeing now, unfortunately, will continue to be added to as more moisture trains up out of the Atlantic and over the U.S. East over at least the next couple of days. And I'm going to zoom out and just leave you with this picture. This is a global picture showing precipitable water, and the plume that we are looking at is visible here, where you see a lot of moisture rising off of the subtropical region and rising into the U.S. East Coast. And this is a feature we've seen for at least a week. Thank you for joining me, and I'll be chatting with you soon.